Good afternoon. I'm thankful to my friend Mrs. Monica Khosla for arranging this lovely program this morning. I'm thankful to Mr. Sanjay Gehlot for giving us a chance to come over here and have a look at this lovely railway property. I'm also very glad that so many students have come out on a Sunday morning to look at our glorious heritage. I would also like to thank all the other dignitaries who have taken out time on a Sunday morning when they could have done so many other things. This morning I'll be talking on the impact of Awadh on Bengal. This will be more like a storytelling. I'm not a professor, I've not done my PhD. It is just that, history is my passion, and I feel that we live in a country which had a glorious past, and we should take a lot of pride in our past, and we should try to preserve whatever we have inherited from our ancestors. Our story goes back to 1707, when the last established Mughal emperor, Alamgir Aurangzeb, died. That was a time when the Mughal Empire had grown in size. And true enough, it started collapsing on its own weight. There was a lot of political anarchy all over the country, and different segments, different pockets started declaring semi-independence. The first to go was Bengal in 1717 under Murshid Quli Khan, followed by Awadh in 1722 under Sadat Khan Burhanul Mulk, and in 1724 Asaf Jah declared some sort of an independence in Hyderabad. In 1708, a Persian nobleman by the name Sadat Khan came to India from Khorasan. He was an ambitious man and he wanted to enhance his career. He was appointed the Subedar of Akbarabad, which is the modern day Agra, and very soon he proved to be an efficient administrator. In 1722, he was appointed in Awadh as the governor, and in those days there was a group of very powerful noblemen by the name Sheikh-Zadas. They were creating a lot of problem for the Mughal emperor. But Sadat Khan was able to subdue these Sheikh-Zadas, and he also contributed towards the reform in the land administration. And in 1722, he laid the foundation of what we now know as the Awadh Empire. The Awadh Empire lasted for 134 years. There were 10 Nawabs. Awadh was not a very big state. It was about 24,000 square mile in area, slightly smaller than the present day Scotland. But it was an extremely prosperous province. The capital city of Lucknow was considered to be more fairer and prosperous than Paris and London of those days. The most outstanding ruler of Awadh was Nawab Asif-ud-Daula. He was the fourth Nawab. He was a man who wanted to rival Delhi, and he built some fabulous buildings in Awadh. So this is the picture of Asifi Imambara. This is a two-storied building. The Imambara is on the ground floor, and on the first floor is what is known as the Bhul Bhulaiya. This was being built in 1784 when there was a terrible famine in Awadh. A lot of people had fallen on bad days. They didn't have any job. Crops had failed. So Asif-ud-Daula wanted to do something to help the people. And then he realized that he should do something which will not only generate employment, but it will also be something which will be one of its kind in the world. So he built this Asifi Imambara, and it took about 20 years to build this Imambara. The interesting point is that when this Imambara was built, during daytime, common laborers would work, and on every third night, he would invite the nobles who had fallen on bad days to break what has been built. So it was like going 3 steps forward and 1 step backward. So that way he was able to give money even to the nobles and those people who were rich at one point of time without hurting their ego and sentiment. It has been said that food was also served to the workers who were working there. To build an imambara of this size, you can understand that you know how much labor you require. And in those days when we didn't have modern technology. So while food was being served, food was being cooked over there in huge caldrons, one day Asif-ud-Daulah was supervising the whole thing, and he walked past that cauldron. He got a whiff of the aroma that was being coming out from one of the cauldrons, and he said to one of his nobles that I would like to taste this food. The nobles told him that Huzur, ye khana to mazdooro ke liye hai, aapke liye nahi. But he said, but I would like to taste this. So anyway, the food was served to him, and he liked the taste, and he called his chef and said that please try to improve the delicacy of this dish. So vegetables were taken out, meat was added, and a magic was created. And what is that magic? And that is the birth of biryani. Of course, I'll be talking about the Calcutta biryani later on. The last ruler was Wajid Ali Shah. He came to throne in 1847, and I consider him to be an extremely unlucky man, because he was a man who was very efficient, he was a man who was much ahead of his time, he had an artistic bent of mind, he was a man who was extremely secular, he was a man who could do wonders had he come 100 years earlier. I'll give you 2 examples of his level of secularism. Every year in his court, Holi was celebrated. Since this is the time of Holi, let me start with an example of Holi. So every year Holi was celebrated in his palace with a lot of enthusiasm and fanfare. But that particular year, Holi and Muharram coincided. Muharram is the first month in the Islamic calendar where Muslims mourn the martyrdom of Imam Hussein, Prophet Muhammad's grandson. A great tragedy had taken place in Karbala in Iraq in 680, where Imam Hussein and 71 of his followers attained martyrdom to save Islam and humanity. And it is a mourning period for all of us. So the Hindu nobles, they went and told Wajid Ali Shah that since this year Holi and Muharram have coincided, we are not going to celebrate Holi because we don't want to upset the sentiments of our Muslim brothers. The Muslim festivals are celebrated, the Muslim festivals are based on the Islamic calendar, which has 355 or 356 days in a year. That is why you find that every year the Muslim festivals get advanced by 10 or 11 days. But Wajid Ali Shah was a ruler and he had to cater to all sections of society. So he told his noblemen that no, like every year we will celebrate Holi. Holi will be celebrated in the morning, and in the evening we will have all those ceremonies which are associated with Muharram. So that way he was able to cater to the Muslims as well as the Hindus in his kingdom. Of course I don't have that picture over here, but one of the most popular picture of Wajid Ali Shah is the one where his chest is exposed. This is not a fashion statement. A lot of people have interpreted it in a different way. But as I said, that Wajid Ali Shah was also a man who had an artistic bent of mind. He was a great poet, He had written more than 100 books. And by wearing that dress where he's exposing his chest, he's trying to give a message to the world that my heart is open. In Urdu we say, Mera dil khula hua hai. And the idea was that if you have an open mind, then you'll be able to absorb everything from all sections of society, from people belonging to different walks of society. Then only you will come to a conclusion which will be logical, which will be rational, and which will be a true reflection of the people with whom you have interacted. So that was a message he was trying to give to people, that, you know, I'm open to your love, I'm open to your pain, your agony, your ambitions, your ecstasy. While all this was going on, the British resident in Awadh did not like it. They wanted to swallow Awadh because Awadh was an extremely prosperous kingdom, and they were trying to defame Wajid Ali Shah at different levels. And I would say that because of their propaganda, they have been able to succeed to a small extent. There's a lot of negative things which you hear about Wajid Ali Shah. No one is perfect. We all have our shortcomings. So the British decided that they should annex Awadh, and Awadh was annexed on a false charge of maladministration. I would like to believe that Wajid Ali Shah at one level was a very simple man. He had heard a lot about British sense of justice and fair play. So he thought, okay, let me go to Calcutta and place my case before the Governor General. In those days, the Governor General used to live in Calcutta. So he left Lucknow. It was a very, very tearful goodbye for him. So from Lucknow, he went to Kanpur. He stayed in Kanpur for a few weeks. From Kanpur, he went to Allahabad. From Allahabad, he went to Banaras. And from Banaras, he came to Calcutta on a boat called MacLeod. It took him 18 days to reach from Banaras to Calcutta. And this is the place where he landed in Calcutta, which is now known as Bichali Ghat. And all of you all have just visited Bichali Ghat. It was a hot and humid day. And after landing in Bichali Ghat, he went to stay in a hotel called Spence Hotel, which was one of the, at that time it was considered to be one of the Asia's finest hotel. He stayed there. And during his stay in Spence Hotel, he went to meet the British Governor General. Awadh was annexed by Lord Dalhousie, but by the time Wajid Ali Shah reached Calcutta, Lord Charles Canning had replaced Dalhousie. And after meeting, when he went to meet Lord Canning, he was given a salute of 21 guns from the ramparts of Fort William. That is the highest gun salute given to any Indian ruler. But after meeting Canning, Wajid Ali Shah realized that this British resident in Calcutta is looking after the interests of English and not any Indian ruler. So he was disheartened, but he was not demoralized. So he wanted to go to England and meet the Queen. But his Hakims advised him not to take such a long journey, keeping in mind that his health was not good. So his mother, his eldest son, Prince Hamid Ali Bahadur, and his younger brother, Sikandar Hashmat, they left for England. They met the Queen, and while negotiations were going on, the first war of uprising took place in our country. In the English army by then, there were a lot of soldiers who at one point of time served under Wajid Ali Shah in Awadh. The English were shrewd administrators. They thought that under the leadership of Wajid Ali Shah, these soldiers may revolt against the English. So on a false charge of spying and on false charge of trying to attack Fort William, Wajid Ali Shah was arrested. And I always tell people that, you know, history can be so fascinating. In 1856, Lord Canning had welcomed Wajid Ali Shah by according him a gun salute of 21 guns. And just 12 months later, the same person, Lord Canning, has issued his arrest warrant. The arrest warrant was written in the most polite language, but an arrest warrant is always an arrest warrant. So Wajid Ali Shah was arrested and he was kept in Amherst House in Fort William. So this is the picture of Amherst House where he was kept. The ground floor was used as his office and he used to live on the first floor. That was the time when the residency in Lucknow was under attack. So the English made it very clear that they will look after Wajid Ali Shah very well. So every day the food used to go from the royal kitchen in Matia Bruj to Wajid Ali Shah. His wife used to send him the food, and along with the food, she used to send something very, very interesting. Can anyone make a guess what she used to send with the food? Any of the students, please? Any guess, please? I know you're all bright students. At least make 2 guesses. My friend is saying biryani. Along with the food, she used to send 2 strands of hair. So that was the level of romance between the king and the queen. And seeing those 2 strands of hair, Wajid Ali Shah used to feel that, she is sitting in front of him. While he was in Amherst House, naturally he was depressed because he had lost his kingdom, and that was the time his mother had passed away, his brother passed away, so he was very depressed. But being a writer, being a poet, being a man having an artistic bent of mind, he didn't allow the depression to get better of him. So he started writing, and he wrote a beautiful work which is in Persian. It's called Husn-e Akhtar, which means sorrows of Akhtar, where he talks about his sorrows, he talks about his pain, he talks about his agony, he talks about his vision, he talks about his ambition. Unfortunately, this book, Husn-e Akhtar, I have no hesitation in mentioning before you all that this book was stolen by the English, and now it is lying in Windsor Castle in UK. So in 1859, when everything settled down and English became the new master of this country, they decided that there's no point in keeping Wajid Ali Shah under Nazarband. So one fine afternoon, they decided to release him. So after his release, he came and started living in what is now known as the BNR house. This is the house which is the official residence of the General Manager, South Eastern Railway. While we were coming to Bichari Ghat, all of you all have seen this BNR house. And since BNR house is a railway property and railway is a rich organization in our country, the building and the surroundings are very well looked after. When he was released in 1859, Wajid Ali Shah was given an opportunity to live anywhere in the country. But his brief stay in Calcutta and Bengal made him realize that if there is any place in Calcutta, in India, where he will get a lot of love, respect, affection, admiration outside Awadh, it is Bengal and Calcutta. He chose Matia Bruj because Matia Bruj was on the banks of river Hooghly, and it reminded him of Gomti. While he was in Lucknow, every evening he used to go on a boat ride on Gomti. River had played a very important role in shaping the Awadh history. The first ruler, it has been said that when he was coming from Faizabad to Lucknow in the boat, a fish had jumped from the water and it landed on his lap. And the Awadh ruler took it as a very good omen. And that is why you find in the royal insignia, you will find an emblem of the fish. Later on, it changed, and with time things evolved and it became a mermaid. So it was being treated as a very good omen that even the creature of the water world is welcoming us. So Wajid Ali Shah liked Matia Bruj because in those days Matia Bruj was a rich area. It was a vast expanse. It had some fabulous buildings. It had a lot of trees, and on the other side was the beautiful and green botanical garden. and in between was the fast-flowing river Hooghly. So he lived in Mathia Bruj, and by the time he settled down in Mathia Bruj, the news spread that Awadh's last ruler is not coming back to Awadh. Initially, when Wajid Ali Shah had come with his entourage, there were about 500 people with him. But when the news spread that the Awadh's last ruler is going to live in Calcutta, hundreds and thousands of people started pouring in. People from different walks of life, people from different strata of society, people from different occupation, people from different religion and community. And very soon, Mathia Bruj developed into a subculture. And Wajid Ali Shah played a very, very important role in it. So one of the important things that Wajid Ali Shah did in Mathia Bruj, he built about 20 palaces, was the building of Siftainabad Imambara. We have just come from Siftainabad Imambara, so this is the main hall where you see the chandeliers and parts of Siftainabad Imambara. So this is another view of Siftainabad Imambara. Along with Imambara, Wajid Ali Shah was also an animal lover. So in 1864, he established what is perhaps the world's first open-air zoo. The zoo was located somewhere where there is the southeastern generating station of Calcutta Electric Supply. The zoo had all types of animals. It had tigers, lions, leopard, hippopotamus, pigeons. It had a huge area for snakes. In those days, entertainment was very much limited. People didn't have much scope. There were no television. So a lot of people used to come from far off places to spend their time in this zoo. At one point of time, there were about 24,000 pairs of pigeons in this zoo. It has been said that he bought pigeons and paid about 11,000 rupees for a pair of pigeons. So that goes to show that, how much he cared for this zoo and animals. Before the advent of Wajid Ali Shah and the people coming from Awadh, Urdu was not a very common language in this part of the country. There were very few people who spoke Urdu. The first real attempt was made in 1780 when Warren Hastings had set up Calcutta Madrasa. In 1784, Williams Jones had set Asiatic Society. And in 1800, Fort William College was set up. So these institutions were set up so that Urdu and other vernacular language can be taught to the people. But the real influx came when people came from Awadh and they started speaking chaste Urdu. As a result of that, Urdu is widely spoken in Calcutta today, and till few years ago, there were as many as 70 publications in Urdu. Newspapers, magazines, fortnightly periodicals, newsletters that were being published from Calcutta and Bengal. Of course, with the advent of online reading and all, many of these newspapers had to close down because it was no longer economically feasible for them. But because of Urdu, the cultural impact was huge. People started taking interest in Mushaira, people started hearing ghazal. Then we had something what is known as Marsiya. Marsiya is this poetic symposium. And Urdu is very widely spoken in Bengal. I remember when initially when I used to go to different parts of the country, people were very surprised when they saw me speaking in Urdu because they thought since I'm coming from Bengal, the only language I could speak was either English or Bengali. But I used to tell them that, Calcutta and Bengal has a huge population of Urdu speaking. When I was talking about Wajid Ali Shah's love for secularism, this is another example. Kathak, as Shovik sir had pointed out, that it developed as a dance as a temple dance in North India, and it was being hugely patronized by Wajid Ali Shah. I'm sure he must have faced a lot of opposition because being a Muslim ruler, that too in medieval India, and taking interest in a dance which originated in a temple in North India. But his love for this performing art, his love for secularism was so strong that he continued to patronize it. And when he came to Calcutta, he established a hall where these dancing, where these Kathak dancers used to perform. And it has been said that a lot of these dancers came from places like Lucknow, Allahabad, Banaras, Meerut, Agra, and they came and they performed in Calcutta. The spin-off was that the Bengal zamindars, they started taking interest in this art form, and they also, some of them had Jalsa Ghar in their houses, and because of this, a new culture developed. There were hundreds of kothas where these mujras used to take place. Because of some cheap Hindi film, these mujras, these kothas have been associated with flesh trade. But in those days, it was considered to be strictly an art form. It was considered to be finishing school. I'm talking about 1930s and 40s and 50s. Parents used to send their sons to these kothas so that they can learn how to sit while they are wearing a sherwani, how to sit when they are wearing a churidar, what to do when someone offers you a pan, how to hold a glass of water. Because these performers were not only performers, but they also knew certain etiquettes which were being taught to these youngsters. While Kathak and other performing arts grew in Bengal, one interesting development was that when this Hindi film industry started blossoming in Bombay, a lot of these artists went to Bombay. Even now you find that a lot of musicians, directors, singers, tabla players, sarangi players are from this part of the country. So it is the same foundation that is coming down. And today Bengal is one region which is culturally very rich. I'm yet to come across any family in Bengal where their child is not interested in Kathak or in singing or drawing. They always try to promote and encourage their children to take these activities. The other activity which Wajid Ali Shah introduced in Matya Bruj was pigeon flying, kabutar bazi, or a lot of money was being spent on pigeon flying. Pigeons have a very strong geographical sense. You leave a pigeon who's living in, say, in this part of the city, you leave this pigeon in, say, Newtown, the pigeon would come back to this place. And a lot of crossbreeding used to take place. Competitions were being held that whose pigeon can fly the most. Until 1940s and 50s and 60s, pigeons were being given as an important gift. People would appreciate if you give them a good breed of pigeon. One of the other activities which Wajid Ali Shah introduced in Calcutta was kite flying. Kite flying was a very popular sport in Awadh. So when he came to Calcutta, he introduced kite flying. Competitions were being held, and it was considered to be something very, very special. A lot of youngsters were involved in kite flying. Serious competitions were held. There used to be a lot of prize money. And a kite would, if your kite would cut another 9 kites, so that kite would never flown. It was being kept as a showpiece in their house. It was being called Nokatta, that this kite has cut 9 other kites. And I have heard from my grandmother that when people used to talk about matrimonial alliances, so one of the things they used to mention was that ye bahut acha patangbazi karte hain. Of course, kite flying, like many other old hobbies and sports, is going out of fashion. I flew kite when I was a young boy, and during this lockdown, when we were forced to stay indoor, I taught how to fly kite to my 2 daughters. So now they also fly kites whenever they get an opportunity. But the interesting aspect of kite flying, which I was mentioning in the boat, is that it has emerged as an important cottage industry in Madhya Pradesh. There are about 3,000 people directly or indirectly involved in making kites. In order to make a kite, you don't require much capital, you don't require much space. Most of the workers are women. In an area like Madhya Pradesh, which do not have a lot of industrial and commercial activities,